Yo, it's your boy Uncle Cooley. Welcome back to the Toast Talk podcast, man. If you don't know what that means to open a sincere transformation upon people. This is episode 29. I have a special guest right now, man. I'm super excited to introduce him. He goes by the name of Tyler. Tyler, what's going on, man? How you feeling today, man?
Carlos, how you doing, family? Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely, man. So we met in the gym. Just to give you guys a little background, we met in the gym, man, and ever since then, I felt like this aura about you. Like, I don't know, like you're a very genuine person. You come across as like really respectful, man. You can tell that you were raised by good parents or just good people in general. So I really wanted to just have this conversation with you, man, because I know that you can drop gems and definitely teach me something. So thank you for being on the show and thank you for your time.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for having me. You know, I was telling you earlier, this is my first time being on a podcast. So just to have the opportunity to speak with a like-minded individual and share insight, that's super valuable for me. And, you know, I think anybody who goes to the gym, we all know that person that we pass by, that every time we see each other, it just clicks. You know, the conversation may only be a minute or two, but, you know, in that minute or two, we just catch up and make sure everything's good, man. So definitely grateful to be here and to be able to share this insight with you.
Yes, sir, Ski, man.
Yes,
so I want you to just, like I said, be yourself, bro. Tell the audience about yourself, man, like whatever thing, like what you have going on and with the initiative that you plan on doing in the future to shape what to achieve for your desires.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big believer that, you know, our purpose on this earth is to serve others. So the initiative that I've been taking recently is to help others become aligned with who they were meant to be, right? And for me, as somebody who's been through a journey where they've been trying to figure out who they are, what their purpose is, I feel as though I have the tools and knowledge to be able to share with others to help them on their journey as well. So that's really where it all stems from, is serving others. And so that's kind of the initiative that I've been working on and helping others become more aligned and really figure out what their purpose is. And you know, that's the beautiful thing, is that each and every one of us has a purpose, right? Now, we may not always know what that is, but there are steps that we can take on a basic level to start to uncover what that purpose is and start to get vision for who we were meant to be. So that's really where I'm trying to serve the most right now.
That's good. So you feel as though like your purpose is definitely just giving back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what's up, man, because a lot of people, especially like in our age, really don't really have that mindset. They tend to have this selfish tendencies to get wherever they want to be and sometimes even hurt others along their journey. So it's always nice to come across somebody that has a genuine soul and a pure heart. So what are some things that probably do you think shaped you to become who you are today? Like, what are some of the experiences that you went through that you would like to share?
Yeah, well, it's crazy to think about it, but I think the hard times are what made me who I was, right? I think situations where you have to become uncomfortable and you're in uncomfortable situations, you're in seasons of pain where you may not understand the purpose. I think those are the times that really cultivate you into who you were meant to be. So when I look back on the hardest times in my life, man, obviously when you're in them, they're super hard to get through. You're asking, why me? Why is this happening to me? But then as time goes on and you're able to get that perspective, you're able to see that those were some of the experiences that really led you to become who you were. So there's a bunch of stories I could go throughout my life, but just, again, instances where it was a painful season, it was a tough time for me. Those are the times I look back on and I'm super grateful for.
So when you were going through those times, like, did you prefer to be isolated to find yourself, or did you reach out to a lot of people, like your social friends, and more so like your family? Like, how did you try to cultivate with that type of experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me personally, I think naturally, sometimes when you get in those seasons, it's very easy to be isolated, right? Because I always say, like, when you don't have anything to give, sometimes it's easier to just be on your own, you know, because you don't feel like talking to people, burdening them with your problems, and you have this sense that there's really nothing you can do to benefit them. So you're almost just kind of stuck in this loop of being in your head. Now, for me personally, when I look back, there was people in my life, from family, friends, people who were really close to me, that I was able to lean on during those hard times. But I think, as anybody can attest, when you're actually going through it, there's something about just being, you know, alone with yourself where you kind of got to figure that thing out. And so I think while I had a support group, I think for me, being isolated is where I saw the most growth. And then it's part of the process, right? You have to be able to come to grips with your thoughts and really evaluate what you're going through to be able to push past it. So So yeah, a little bit of both.
That's good because I remember when I was going through a dark times. I'm not even gonna lie to you, Tyler. I isolated myself, and the only people that I really relied on, it wasn't even my parents actually, because I didn't really want to disappoint them.
Right.
And I feel like as when we go through our adolescence and we're going through our 20s, sometimes you don't really want to express yourself in a way towards your parents because you don't want to fog up the image that they have of you. So I really relied on my girlfriend, and I really relied on one of my friends, man. And I'm super grateful. You know, we all go through these dark times, and one of the times that I went through is being unemployed for months. For months, bro. Like really trying to figure myself out, like thinking that I am who I am, but failing to actually execute to actually get where I want to be. And that's where a lot of people go through. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like just have this image and this expectation of themselves, but sometimes we disappoint ourselves. So to hear you actually like, you know, rely on a little bit, but really rely on yourself, you know, and I really definitely want you to elaborate on that. Like give us like some pointers, like give us some certain things that you were doing during that time, like whether that was going to the gym, whether that was just trying to create new habits. Like we really want to know the gyms, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your point, like, you know, community is definitely important. I think surrounding yourself with like-minded people that can pick you up when you get down. You know, if you try to walk through this life alone, it's going to be tough, right? Nobody can do it by themselves. So I think having that community is important. Now, in terms of that process that you have to go through within yourself to be able to elevate, if I'm going to be providing you some gems, as you call it, I think the most important thing is to become self-aware, right? You have to understand what you're bringing to the table. You know, I think in that season where you're isolated, you're single, you're by yourself, you have to almost deal with yourself. And you have to understand what type of person that you are and what you're giving back out to the world. So a process that I always try to familiarize people with is called self-mastery, right? You have to become the master of yourself. Now, when you're in those seasons where things aren't going your way or some type of hardship, to your point, becoming laid off, right? When you become laid off, all of a sudden, that is just the universe telling you that you need to go in a different direction, right? It's almost rearming you with a new plan. So I think when you're in those seasons, you have to first evaluate where you are and what type of thoughts that you're having. And then you just have to simply instill better habits to become that person that you want to be. And I think one thing that's super helpful, and it's something that's very simple, but if you're in a hard season and you don't really understand why you're going through what you're going through, one thing I always recommend to people is to simply make a list of everything that you desire out of your life. It could be fitness related, it could be financially related, anything that you desire in your life, write it down, and then underneath of it, make bullet points for how you're going to get there, right? And that's something so simple, but what that does is it allows you to visualize who you want to be and how you're going to get there. And when you have all of this stuff in front of you, now all the decisions that you're making in life, you're going to want to be aligned towards the person that you want to be, right? So that was something that was very powerful for me, is just taking stock of where I was, where I wanted to go, and how I was going to be able to get there.
That's a great point. And I want to stay here. Like I want to connect with the audience and the viewers. Like, can you share an appropriate scenario or situation that you're comfortable sharing with the audience so they can have like something that they can relate to?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I was in a similar predicament myself, and it was I was laid off of my job. And at the time, I was also going through a breakup and just one of those situations where it felt like, you know, I was broke, right? I had an injury, so I wasn't able to get into the gym. So that release was taken away from me. And I just really was in a situation where it was just me and my thoughts. Like I wasn't training. I didn't have a job. I was going through this breakup, right? So you have that's a whole thing in and of itself. And then at the same time, still trying to be a father to my sons, which is where, you know, I have twin boys. They're now 4 years old. But during that time, they were just like 2 years old. So I think that was definitely a situation where I really had to evaluate where I was at. And it wasn't easy. You know, I went through some times where you're almost asking, like, why me? Why am I here? You know, you start to question everything a little bit. But as you go throughout that process, you just learn who you are. You start to become more aware of yourself. And suddenly when you come through and you go through that time, what it's doing is it's building the endurance in you to get to where you want to go. That's all those seasons are doing, right? And so you have to have that different perspective that when you're going through those seasons, it is for a reason. You know, we don't go through anything that we can't handle. So anybody in that season where it just seems dark and things are just not going your way, you have to understand that that season is not there to take you out. It's simply to rearm you in a different direction and push you towards the purpose that you have within yourself. Because if you think about it, if everything's comfortable and everything's just going good in life, what would be your reason for changing, right? You would have no reason to. You would just want to stay where you're at. You want to be comfortable. Life sometimes will make us actually progress towards where we need to be. And that's how I start to look at those type of situations.
This is what I'm talking about. It's that
Yeah,
type of
man.
aura you have, bro. I
Hey,
don't know what
man.
it is, bro. It's just, I'm not sure, man. It's just like, it's like you're a blessing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to get all
Appreciate
sentimental or
that,
whatever,
brother.
but you are a blessing, bro, because you could just tell you speak from the heart. And this is pure. And this is like, I wanted to ask you, do you have an ego? Like, hear me out, because when you go on through those dark times and you trying to really rely on yourself, and like, do you have this image of yourself for the point where it's like, I got to do this. Like, I can't allow other people to perceive me like this because I have to protect myself. I have to have this image. Like, and that's the only reason why I ask you that, because a lot of people, when we go through these dark times, you try not to burden other people with our problems, and we try to not allow other people that we love for us to be vulnerable. So that's why I asked, like, do you have this ego of you, or you completely like shut that off, like through the process or throughout your life?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
You know, I think naturally as people, we have a certain ego in terms of, you know, we can allow other people's thoughts of us to dictate, you know, how we move and certain things that we do. So I think ego was certainly a part of it. You know, you don't want people to know you're going through those down seasons, and, you know, you almost definitely want to keep up that appearance that everything is good. You don't want to hurt the others around you, which sometimes can be an unhealthy thing, right? Because I think the people that are closest to you, that are around you, they want to help you out. But sometimes, yeah, I think ego can sometimes get in the way of that. You know, we want people to think everything's good, even when it may not be. So, yeah, there's certainly a little bit of ego that comes along with it.
Do you think,
Absolutely.
like, of course, like, that's natural for a lot of people, especially, you know, when you try to live to a standard, and when everybody in a way can look up to you or just try to support you the best way they can, because they have this type of initiative to get where you want to be. You know, a lot of people try to even make sacrifices for themselves to push, you know, people that they love forward. And that's because they can be a lot more genuine and just have that type of pure heart that they have. So that's really great that you try to be aware of that, because a lot of people our age don't even have that type of emotional intelligence.
Right.
You know what I mean? And let's speak on that too, because, like, what do emotional intelligence look like? Like, do you think it's something that's in your brain in a way it's like you just try to master your emotions? Like, okay, I'm getting upset. I know I'm getting upset. I'm going to handle it this way. Or it's just like, you know what? Like, it's something that happens. Do you feel like it's more so internal or external? How you react to things?
Yeah, so I think emotional intelligence is, to your point, how you react to certain things. And I think, you know, it's easy to criticize, it's easy to get mad at others, it's easy to blame others, right? All of those things are very easy. I think emotional intelligence, to me, it means being able to be in a certain situation and taking that step back and evaluating the situation before you just act impulsively. You know, I think as humans, we have animal instincts. You know, sometimes, let's say somebody cut you off in traffic. You may want to curse that person out. You may want to have a little bit of road rage. Like, those are our human instincts coming in. Emotional intelligence in that same situation could mean, hey, somebody cut you off, let them go, and it's wish them well on their journey, right? That's having a big level of emotional intelligence. And I think also emotional intelligence can be, hey, I'm not going to do others how they did me, right? A lot of times we want to have that revengeful mindset, or, oh, they did this, so I'm going to do this. I think having emotional maturity, being able to step back, wish them well, and knowing you can, but you don't have to. I can curse this person out. I can do what they did to me, right? But that's not going to serve me, and it's not going to serve them. So I'm going to handle the situation differently. So I think emotional intelligence is something that, in today's world especially, is something everyone should try to possess.
That's good, bro.
Yeah, man.
And I want to touch on this too, because I want us to elaborate on that, because what you just said is basically, in a way, being the bigger person in a way can sometimes be a challenge, but sometimes it's necessary. Do you think it's always cool and healthy to always put your ego or just be the bigger person, even when you don't have to be? Like, do you think that's always healthy, or do you think some people should reevaluate your worth and sometimes being taking a step back away from them to they can reevaluate their worth for your worth?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think it's a balance, right? I think every situation lends itself to a different type of action. You know, for me, I think, for example, like, you know, recently I value my time, right? That's one thing I always try to do with the things that I have going on, the way my life is set up now. I value my time more than ever. So what that means is, you know, if I reach out to somebody and I want to reconnect, and maybe somebody I knew a long time ago or somebody I haven't seen in a while, and I try to reconnect with them multiple times, and every time it's an excuse for why we can't get together, I'm not going to go to that person and say, oh, you don't have time for me, like you act a certain way, this, that, and the third. Instead, I'm going to evaluate it, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm done trying to make the effort to connect with this person. If we're going to still be connected and have a relationship, there needs to be some effort on that, and I'm not going to continue to extend myself. So I think instead of like letting the other person know about themselves and doing these different things, I think just your actions have to dictate how you handle a certain situation. So it really depends on what the situation calls for.
Do you think you should always communicate when it comes to certain things like that? When it comes to maybe taking a step back from someone, or do you think it's just best for them to be aware of when I guess the universe or God allows them to be aware of?
Absolutely. So no, I don't think it's always. I think one thing that can serve everybody really well is to be able to exit those relationships without an explanation, right? Because again, the people that you try to connect with that seem to never have time for you or make excuses as to why you can't hang out, if you want to come at them and criticize them or say something about them, our natural instinct is to not be accepting of that. And we're not going to take criticism well or take those words well, even if you're not coming from a bad place. People's natural tendency is to think, I'm not wrong. Let me explain why I'm not wrong, right? So essentially in those type of situations, sometimes it is better to just remove yourself and almost see if that person notices, right? See if they know that I'm no longer around or committing my time. And sometimes what I found with the hard thing about that is when you do take that step back, you won't hear from that person, right? So it's almost as if like nothing really needs to be said sometimes. Sometimes you just need to remove yourself and see what happens. Yeah.
Do you think you can love someone unconditionally if they have a big ego? If you know it's not really them making those type of decisions, but then it's more so a decision making that they're making because they're trying to defend themselves?
Yeah, I think unconditional love, there's just certain people you have unconditional love for. You know, no matter what they do and no matter what happens, that unconditional love is going to be there. So I think ego aside, there's just those certain relationships in your life, and yeah. So I do think ego aside, there's just those certain people that you have that type of love for. Yeah.
You know, I had a big ego when I was going through my adolescence. Like I want to say like 14 to 18, because I had this certain type of standard for myself, and I wasn't going to surround myself. Like I used to say in high school, like, well, I'm not going to know you in a year or so I don't care about you. You know what I mean? And I came across very heartless in a way and very cold and very like straight to the point, assertive in a way. However, like as I grew up and matured a little bit, it's certain things that necessarily need to be said because it takes away from living in the moment. And I understood that sometimes you can't really articulate those type of things like that because sometimes it can hurt yourself because you have this certain type of image about yourself that's false, is a false, and it clogs up for who you really want to be inside. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like if I have a big ego, it's like I can't react to certain things in a way. Like I sometimes I'm scared or maybe shy or I think I'm better than this because now I'm not taking the initiative to create opportunity for myself. And in the future, sometimes that can hinder the person I'm trying to grow to be. You know what I'm saying? And that's why actually, because a lot of people go through these types of experiences of, I'm just going to live my whole entire life with having a big ego and I'm not going to reach out for help, or sometimes I can't really have people look at me in a way that I don't want them to because I don't want to be quote unquote vulnerable.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's why it's really healthy, in my opinion, to have loved ones that will look at you with unconditional love. And it's crazy. I asked this a long time ago. on my other episode, I asked somebody that, do you think you can love someone without being vulnerable? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's really deep when you really think about it. Because can I really love somebody if I'm not vulnerable? Like, if I'm afraid to show you who I really am, and that even comes with showing you my flaws.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, in relationships, sometimes when you really love somebody, you show them your flaws in a way. You know what I'm saying? So,
Absolutely.
like, my next question for you is, like, do you, like, what shapes an ego to you? What are some of the experiences that somebody may go through that shapes their ego in a way where it's like, I have this big ego? Because some people have bigger egos than others. So I want to allow you to touch on that and that type of perspective. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question in terms of like the ego and everything like that. It's really something to think about. You know, if we want to define an ego, right, I guess it would be like what type of image, I guess, that you have for yourself of how other people view you. I think that may be fitting for what an ego actually is. I think the ego, the more you work on yourself and the more that you realize it's about serving others, I think the more it quiets that ego. You know, it's very easy to be self-serving, right? And I think that's part of what an ego is, like being really much about yourself and how you're viewed, and it's all about you. I think when you shift your mindset towards helping others and just being yourself, I think that ego kind of goes away a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of what I would have to say about ego. But it's something to definitely think about, how an ego can kind of change the way we look at things or how we view ourselves or how we try to get people to view us. That's something important to consider.
Is it even healthy to have an ego? Like, 'cause that's the thing I'm trying to get at. Like, is it really healthy to have this type of image, a false image of who you are to protect yourself? Because sometimes I catch myself like, dang, I feel as though I should have put my ego up here because I didn't like the way this person said this, and I allowed them to say it. Like, I was the bigger person too much. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes I think, in my opinion, being the bigger person, because for the most part, I'm the oldest sibling. So it taught me at a younger age that I always have to be the bigger person, no matter if it's with my friends and my relationship with my girlfriend, family members. It's like I always have to be the bigger person. And sometimes people can fog that up of taking kindness as a weakness.
Of course.
And sometimes I catch myself like, I don't have to do this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's I hate to say this, like, I don't need you. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to be here because of the love and the relationships and the experiences that we have for one another.
Right.
But it's like, when people age and as you grow as a person, it's like you always have to reevaluate, like, should I allow this person to know my real worth by putting my ego up? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's really ridiculous sometimes. You know what I mean? That you have to paint this picture of who you don't want to be because you have to protect yourself from society.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you ever read this book called The 48 Laws of Power? By Robert Greene?
I have not read that one.
Yeah.
It's a good one?
No.
No?
It's a good read in the sense of you can learn a lot, but basically he just talks about like how to really just level up in a way whereas people looking at you. Like he says, like, physical appearance is a way that people will determine power. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes when you do something wrong, sometimes you have to downplay it instead of being accountable for what you did. And there's other things that it just basically try to shape your brain and your personality in a way that is always, you have to be quote unquote superior to someone.
Right.
And I don't think it's really healthy. That's why I said, like, it's a good read because it's always nice to have a different perspective in a way. Mm-hmm. But it's not a good read because it starts to change who you are.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
a way. Like, you know, knowledge is power, especially when you're applying it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's really good that you established at a young age that you are trying to just give as much as possible. Like, do you feel as though you may get into philanthropy whenever you can?
Yeah, so you got to break it down for me. What's the philanthropy? What exactly is the definition?
So,
because that's something I hear a lot, right? Philanthropy.
Yeah. So, long story short, it's basically like just giving back to, you know, nonprofits, charities, and stuff like that. Like, you know, when you reach a certain type of a mogul scale, like, you can make $1 multi-million in your bank account, but it's like they'll put your name on the wall if you give out like 5 million to the Philadelphia Library.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's stuff like that, like just basically like giving back to nonprofits, charities and things of that nature. Like just, you know, like doing donations or fundraisers to donate and things of that nature. That's why I asked, like, you know, because you spoke about giving back. Like, do you see yourself giving back in a way whereas like your legacy will live on, you know, even after your physical moves on as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I said, life for me is about giving and it's about serving. So as much, you know, as you level up and you're able to contribute to your church or you're able to give to a nonprofit or just help people in that are in situations that are not ideal, that's what it's all about, right? And I think even on a smaller scale than that, there's someone, you know, when we open our eyes tomorrow morning, there's somebody we'll be able to serve, right? Somebody's going through something. We may have a piece of knowledge that can help them out. You know, even giving money to a homeless person on the street, to me, that's giving, right? And it's not about what they do with the money. It's the fact that you gave, and that's the important part. So, yeah, man, no matter what scale it is on, whether it's, you know, donating a bunch of money to an organization or simply just giving somebody some knowledge that might help them when they wake up that morning, that to me is what it's all about. So yeah, I'll never stop giving.
Yeah, that's good. Cause but you know what? I was actually listening to this song by Fabulous the other day.
Okay.
And it's called Selfish. And he says sometimes the givers have to limit themselves from giving because the takers never limit themselves from taking. How do you feel about that?
That's good.
You know,
that's really good. It's hard to argue with that bar, right?
You know
that's
what
good.
I'm saying? Because he was like, sometimes, you know, when you give, you got to limit yourself because the takers never stop taking.
Right.
And I know you always talking about giving back. Do you have like a limit of how much you give back to your family or your friends? Like, because it's like in a way when you're increasing in value and when you're doing certain things that you desire and achieving, sometimes people start looking for handouts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like I want to ask you, are you the type of person that continues to give out them handouts even if they're relying on you and they don't want to help themselves? Or do you just continue to, you know, it's for a higher purpose?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of discernment, right? Like every situation is so different and you know, somebody may ask you for something that it's like, hey, I got you. If you need it, you got it. But then I think it can come to a certain point where it becomes abusive almost, right? And so, you know, I don't think we should just give just because there's a certain point where abuse does happen. Like I think he refers to, you said Fabulous, like, you know, the takers aren't going to limit what they take. So I think surrounding yourself with people who you can give to that you know is in the right place. Mm-hmm. But then also, again, just being able to have discernment in different situations as to when enough is enough, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that varies from situation to situation.
Yeah, and it definitely does, man, because sometimes you just have to reevaluate everything you do in life. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have to have even other people to tell you about yourself. You know what I mean? Because you have to always limit everything. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I always tell people just live for you. And then because nobody wants to be around in a way a miserable person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you're miserable, you're going to bring everybody else around you down. But if you're upbeat and everybody's supporting you, for the most part, everybody wants you to be happy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But sometimes not everybody's going to tell you that they don't want you to succeed.
Yeah.
And that's why it's always important just to always have that emotional intelligence. Like, well, this person said this to me, or this person didn't do this. You know what I mean? Because it always put things into a perspective of reality, and stop trying to believe how a person should be. Mm-hmm. And, you know, more so false hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, to your point, like we spoke about this before we got on camera, mm-hmm. but, you know, I think energy is a language in and of itself. Like people can feel what type of energy you're bringing before you even say a word, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to remember that. And I think it's also important to who you have in your circle. You know, like right now in each and every one of our lives, take time to evaluate, like, who are the 10 closest people in your life? And do something simple and write down, are they helping you or are they hurting you? Mm-hmm. And I think for me, I want to, in my circle, I want people who can tell me about myself, as you mentioned, like, hey, here's something that you're doing that you may not realize, or here's where you can get better. I want that. I want that type of feedback. But it comes down to having those right people in your circle, because if you have people that are not really looking out for your best interests and then they give you some feedback, one, you may not really be receptive to it, or it may be them coming from a wrong place. Right. But when you have those people that want to see you get better and you can really trust their opinion, now that feedback that they're giving to you, you can take value in it, and now you can start to apply it to become a better version of yourself. And those people are very hard to come by. You know, they don't come around often. But what I found is that when you remove the people that are not meant to be in your life, it opens the door for people that are meant to be in your life. And I think that's an important process to go through, and really making sure your circle is tight. You know, there's this saying that I'm starting to believe more and more, that, you know, you are a product of the 5 closest people that you hang around. And I think that's just a fact, right? So making sure your circle is aligned and people that want to see you do better, there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, it is. And I agree 100%, because sometimes you definitely have to reevaluate your circle, because you are who you surround yourself with in a way.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's crazy because our parents, in a way, it's like, even though we're old enough to start making our own decisions, we can't allow our parents' flaws to determine our future. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're going to have to go back in your 20s and be accountable. Like, that wasn't healthy what my parents did, or that wasn't healthy. I don't want to raise my kids like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to say this to my kids. It's like a lot of people don't hold themselves to that type of standards. Like, well, my parents did this, and this is how I'm going to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even though if it's bad, it's like whatever they went through as a child or in their adolescence, even if it was painful, it's like they want somebody else to have that same type of quote unquote trauma, or that same type of bad experience that they had. You know what I mean? So that's why it's always important to, like you said, have this type of emotional intelligence, and have people that will tell you about yourself even if you don't want to have it, and reflect on your own. You know what I mean? Like, living in a moment requires us to know who we actually are and why we do certain things the way we do. And I always preach that I think everyone should go to therapy. Even if you're the happiest person in the world, it's just you start learning so much about yourself in a way, whereas you just would never know. It gives you that type of clarity. You know what I'm saying? Like, wow, like, this is why I do certain things. Like, you don't know what you don't know.
Right. Yeah, you know, and I think I personally have never done therapy, but I think it's a great thing for people that utilize it, because like you said, it's that process of self-actualization. And I think from what I hear, it's like there's certain things in your life that happen when you may have been a child that were never addressed, that shape certain decisions that you make as you become, you know, older and get into your older years. So I think that's very important. And, you know, Carlos, to your point about parents and things that are passed down and things like that, I think there needs to be a healthy balance of having respect for your parents and, you know, understanding that they did the best that they could. Whatever generational curses that they didn't break, it's on you to break them. You know, I think it comes to a certain point where when you become an adult, there's no more blaming your parents, right? There's no more blaming other people for where you are. You know, and that's something I see a lot, is just a lack of accountability when people get into their older years. You know, yeah, man, like, nobody's situation was ideal. You know, even people that grew up with like both parents, like, obviously that's great to have that family structure. But even those people have issues from their parents that stem from when they were children that they have to address and deal with. And so I think it's important for everyone to see where your parents took it, where they struggled, and build onto that. You know, like my kids, I want them to blow me out of the water. You know what I mean? I want them to, whatever level I end up taking life to, I want them to surpass me and take it to another level. And so I just think it's important to understand that, you know, you have so many things that you have control over. It doesn't matter what your background is or where you came from. You have the ability to change it now, and you got to be accountable for that. And I think when we can do that, it goes a long way in getting to where you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that you say that, because there's literally no manual on how to be a parent.
Right.
It's like you learn as you go, and sometimes you can learn from others and through others' experiences, but you have to realize that you're going to make some mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
But as long as you have your kids and your loved ones' best interest, that's what matters, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, I always like to say, you know, I hate to say this, but tomorrow isn't promised for no man. And you can't really take life for granted. And you always have to continue to give back. And you always have to try to your best to an extent to be yourself. And if somebody actually is trying to bring you out of yourself, that means you need to maybe reevaluate having them around you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Even if it's a loved one, or even if somebody that you would like to be interested in, things of that nature, that, you know, it's really challenging, you know, and a lot of people don't touch on that. Like, you really have to hold yourself accountable and unlearn certain things that your parents or something certain people did to you. Whether that's in a previous relationship that you don't want to bring to the next relationship, or that's just, I did this to this sibling, I'm not going to do this to this sibling, or I did this to the one parent. Like, you have to really reevaluate life in the way it's like unbiased.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are some of the toughest things to cut out when you really start your journey towards self-mastery and self-alignment. Part of that process is removing people that are no longer serving you, right? And sometimes the hardest people to cut off can be that family member, right? Family's always a difficult one. It could be that friend that you've known since third grade. It could be that person you were in a relationship with that might have hurt you, or that you may be hurt, but they're not letting you forget about that, right? And those are some of the toughest people to remove from your life, right? And it's hard for a reason. But I think when you can actually commit to the journey and commit to separating yourself from those people, that's, like I talked about before, when you can remove those people, you're then allowing people who can serve you and are serving you, you allow those people into your life. So I think that's such an important part of the process, is making sure that people around you align with where you want to go. And to my point with, comfort and growth don't go together. I'm a huge believer in that. Some of the most discomfortable times that we can have is removing those people that are family, that we're close with, or that we become so used to having in our lives. And just to kind of touch on that, not to harp on it too much, but as humans, our mindset is one of the most important things that we possess. Now, with that said, our minds are very delicate. And what I mean by that is that seeds can easily be planted. So hang around somebody who doesn't believe in your dreams, like you just talked about. Hang around somebody that keeps a stigma attached to you. If you hang around those people long enough, they're going to plant seeds. And those little seeds grow into the things that stop us from getting to where we want to go. So you have to be very extreme and intentional about who you keep around you, because those seeds can easily be planted. So that's an important thing and I struggle with it too, right? It's not just like I'm just cutthroat out here and, oh, you're dead to me, this, that, and the third, but you have to really get extreme about the relationships in your life. You got to be very intentional with that.
Yeah, and that's the key word, attentions. Like, allowing yourself to make mistakes and allowing yourself to actually be who you want to be, man. Because without that, you're not being genuine to who you are. You know what I'm saying? And we are in our 20s, and it's like a blessing to age. You know what I mean? And we always have to make sure that we're selecting wise people around us. You know what I mean? And trying to look for ways to grow as a person, to really, really reflect on who you're trying to be, and not allowing somebody to take you out your element. Because that's the most, like you said, like throughout this episode, we touched on the ego. You know what I mean? Not allowing our ego to determine how we should react. You know what I mean? If it's not in the genuine purpose. And really allowing our kids, you know what I mean, to really elevate ourselves. You know what I mean? Because it's like, when you look back on it, it's no manual, like I said, to be a parent. But at the end of the day, as long as you have the best interest for your kids and you're trying to elevate them to have this type of generational wealth or generational mindset that can be extremely healthy to give back in their community or to their family. You know what I mean? Like, we only have a X amount of time on this earth. And that's all we have before life passes on. And I even said on my last podcast, Tyler, I can't even go down and tell you my grandmother's name. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, we do certain things for us, and we pray to God, or we hope that the universe can transition that to help our future generations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, bro, as black men, you know what I'm saying? It's crazy how, black and brown men, it's crazy how, ancestors used to jump off the ship. Like, our ancestors went through so much, man, to put us in a position where we could finally live our dreams to be on this podcast today.
Yeah.
Like, it gets deep, you know what I mean? And hopefully one day that we look back, they're going to say, well, I remember when my granddad, Tyler, was on this podcast and he dropped gems. Like, this episode will be forever, bro.
Absolutely.
Like, they will remember this when we're gone.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's the power of technology. That's the power of being genuine. And that's the power of creating an opportunity for ourselves, man.
Nah, 100%. And, you know, funny story in regards to this. So I was, on my father's side, I was at my grandfather's house. And I had just casually, it had been on my mind to understand, like, what type of, I know they were from Africa, obviously that side of the family, but like where in Africa, right? Like what is some background about like his dad and his father's fathers? Like where do we come from? You know, I had like this craving on the inside of me to figure that out. And I finally got in front of him and he was just like, I don't know, we're black, right? And that was the answer I got. And not any shade on him, right? I think it probably wasn't as big of a deal to kind of have that understanding of that, but it was just something that I was really focused on. And so to your point, like I want to leave a legacy behind, right? I want my children's children to know who I was and what I did, and again, to continue to elevate and take it a step further. So I agree, man. I think anybody who reads the Bible enough, it talks so much about generation to generation, like what you leave behind. That's really all it's about, because like you said, our time on this earth is limited, right? If we do it right and it goes well, we got 100 years. The only thing that we leave behind is our children, right? So you have to understand that it's all about passing it to the next generation and continuing to elevate your bloodline. That's something that I'm very passionate about.
That's good, bro.
Yeah, man.
Cause it's like, man, to touch on that, the fact that, you know, a lot of people really don't care where they come from, and a lot of people do care where they come from. I actually took a 23 ancestry test last year in January.
I've been wanting to do that. Does
Yeah,
that work?
bro.
Is it accurate?
You never know. You know what I mean? Like, how accurate is it? Because they can just, you know, quote unquote, like my dad was just telling me, they could just put anything in there. Like, you don't know. But that's like the older generation thinking like this type of technology is not as advanced as they say it to be. But I found out that I was Nigerian.
Wow.
Yeah. And I would have went my entire life not knowing actually where my ancestors from. And I'm from like Igbo or Edo, Nigeria. And then it's like, you know, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Ghana.
Right.
And then it even has something like, of course, like Irish, and Filipino and stuff like that. All this type of stuff. But I'm like 78, 80% like West African. And those are the type of things that I feel as though it's always a blessing to know where you come from.
Absolutely.
Because we don't, as black and brown people, we don't always have that privilege. You know what I mean? Like our last names. Like my last name is a Switzerland last name, and I'm black.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Hey, man. But that just goes to show you how connected we are as humans.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And, you know, yeah, some of us are black, some of us are white, some of us are from this part of the world, right? But at the end of the day, man, we're brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that's why peace and just loving your fellow brother and sister is so important, man.
Yeah.
Just that love
Yeah.
and peace. You know, so much is jammed down our throat to separate us, and we could do a whole thing on how they try to separate us. But, yeah, man, we're all just one.
Yeah.
We're all just one.
We're
right?
the human race, man.
We're the humans.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we're going to make mistakes along the way. But I definitely want to thank you for coming on a podcast, bro. Like, is there anything that you have upcoming that you want the viewers to know?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you guys get a chance, if you guys are on TikTok, Instagram, you can follow me at Vision is a Verb. I do have an ebook coming out called Foundation for Alignment. It's going to be dropping sometime in April. Still working on the exact launch date, but it's just going to be a book to help people find their way, establish a foundation for becoming aligned with who they were truly meant to be. So again, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Vision is a Verb, and then look for my ebook. I will have a pre-sale coming out sometime within the next month or so. So definitely tap in with me, man, and we'll help you guys find your true purpose.
Yes, sir, man.
Yeah,
Hey,
man.
man, thanks for coming on the show. This is the Toast Up segment. Let's get the water. Oh, you don't have any water.
I don't have water with me, man, but
Well, I'm not gonna so I just wanted to let you know, man, like, toast to you, Tyler,
yeah.
for actually shaping the beautiful mind that you have and taking the initiative to hold yourself to a standard, whereas you really want more for yourself and you want more for your family, and you want to create this generational opportunity that you will leverage, will pass on forever. Not a lot of people, like, you know, especially in their 20s or 30s, have the mindset that you have, man. So we're blessed to have you, man. It's definitely a privilege to have somebody come on the show and really drop gems and really be transparent with the viewers and audience, man. So toast to you, toast to the ebook that you have planned coming out within 2 months. And we are looking forward to actually purchasing it. So I would definitely share that on my Instagram page and whatever platform that I'm using
Appreciate that,
to
brother.
make sure that a lot of people know that what you're doing and what you're creating, what you're saying is definitely something that can elevate them and push them forward. So toast to you, Tyler, man. Thank you for coming on the show once again, and toast to your achievements, brother.
Appreciate you,
Yes,
brother.
sir,
Keep
Ski.
doing your thing, man. Love the setup in here. You know, thank you for taking the time to have me. You know, you reached out, and this was an opportunity for like-minded people to connect, and we're only here to make each other better. So definitely looking forward to supporting your platform as well, and we'll have to do this again in the
Yes, sir,
future,
Ski.
brother.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah,
Toast
man.
up with you, man.
All right, my man.
All right, yes, sir. Yes, sir, man.